Hello one and all, and welcome to my YouTube channel. In an earlier video we removed these carburetors. Be sure to check the video out if you need help on that, but now we're going to disassemble them to rebuild them. And first here I'm draining this old gas. In my case this gas is 5 years old, raunchy smelling, not good at all. And like I said, I just loosened the screw in the bottom of the float ball, and then we're going to turn it around and do the same for the other carburetor and get the old fuel out. Like I say, a little less mess when we take and pull the bowls off the carburetors. Yeah, interestingly, for not a real large carburetor, there's actually probably still about another. Now this one don't seem to have as much, but that first one seemed to have about 2 ounces or so of fuel in it. Now that one was not as much. It must have, when I pulled them off, I know some did dump out. Must have lost more, and here we are. Have a piece of cardboard laying down on a table to, like I say, keep the mess from coming onto it there, and maybe help to keep the parts in order. Now we're just going to loosen the screws on the carburetor float ball in a diagonal pattern. Since it is aluminum, we don't want to take and loosen on one side or the other, for fear of potentially you could warp the float ball. And just my luck, this one's being stubborn, it doesn't want to come, so I'm going to grab my little ratcheting wrench and the driver bit, gets more torque, and there it goes. I've had over the years a lot of problem with screws and motorcycles not wanting to turn. I don't know why they have to just use screws, but well, like I say, it would be nice if they used like a Torx head or just hex head, but this seems to be, or even Allen head, but they are infatuated. Oh, the bikes I've had, Yamaha, Suzuki's, Hondas, with these Phillips head screws. And anyhow, they're loose, and once you break them loose, you're good to go. And get this one turned out the last couple of turns, and now we're going to take and remove the bowl, which surprisingly, it's, well, sort of stuck, not too bad. And you can see a large accumulation of gunk in that. Now it's time to remove the float pin, which should just slide out. I'm just starting it here with the screwdriver, and going to take and should just pull out without a lot of effort. Yep, you can just pull that out with your fingers. And then I'm just going to take and lift the float and the needle and seat out, which now is not coming. There's the float, but the needle itself is stuck in the seat, and it won't pull whatsoever. Like I say, you can see it down in there. Now grab it with the needle nose pliers. It definitely explains why the bike wouldn't run right. This old fuel did a number on this, and again, this is the first one I've tore motorcycle carburetors apart, carburetors on cars. I've never had one of these stuck to this degree, and it's still not coming. Maybe here, get it, and there it does finally come out, and that definitely explains a lot of issues. And the next step, I'm going to take and remove the slow jet here first with the straight screwdriver. It fits nice and snug. You want to try and make sure. Of course, honestly, the rebuild kit probably will come with one of these jets, but I'm not sure of that yet. I ordered the kit, but they're not here. And there is the slow jet removed. And like I say, this fine little opening on that, which most likely is clubbed. Now we're going to remove the main jet. This is the one, like I say, that does the main feeding of the gas. Okay, and there, that turned loose. And here, get it turned out, give you, there it is. Again, lots of small parts to keep track of. And now I'm going to take a 10mm socket and remove the needle seat. I said earlier about removing the needle seat and the needle, but the needle seat is this part here that threads in. The needle is supposed to just pull out simply, but this is threaded in, and that turned loose. And here we'll pull that out and look down underneath this and see what we have. And lo and behold, there's a little gasket that you'll need, and on that seat there is a filter. Okay, and lay that to the side for future reference. Again, the new carburetor kit definitely should have that, or it's no use at all to me. Okay, now I'm going to take a 7mm socket here and move the bottom part where the main jet turned into, the holder for it, and that was there. Give it about a half a turn, it broke free, and then we'll just spin it out of the carburetor, the main body of it, and there's again more of it's coming apart. And if you notice, I'm taking all the parts out of one carburetor to start with, which I'm working with the left one, because I want to keep the carburetors, the left and right to pieces. I don't want to mix them up. Okay, and here I'm just this simple enough, turning out the idle adjustment screw, the thumb screw. Okay, now turned it around, we're going to take and remove the vacuum chamber cover, which again 4 screws hold it. And this you want to take, and you'll see here shortly if you've never torn a motorcycle carburetor apart before, but you want to keep some tension against this once they get the final screw out, because it is an enormous spring underneath for a carburetor. Indeed, if you were just had moderate problems, you wouldn't probably not have to disassemble carburetors as far as I'm going to, like say, you stick with the video, I'm taking them the whole way apart and splitting the carburetors, but under just normal maintenance, if just a little dirt or something messes a carburetor up, it's one that's been used regularly, you wouldn't have to do this. But like I say, I wanted the parts to clean everything very well. Oh, besides the old gas, look at that spring I was telling you about. But back on the subject, besides the old gas, I learned that the person that had the bike, he actually tried running it on the old gas, so who knows what's happened. And that, there it is. It just pops right out, vacuum diaphragm piston. No problem on that. Now we're going to take and remove the screws that hold the air cutoff valve cover, and the one screw is a combination. It holds the air cutoff valve cover plus the retainer for the vacuum hose joint connection. And there is the little connector, the plastic vacuum connector, and here we just removed the last screw that holds the air cutoff valve cover on the carburetor. And this also, but not near like the other spring. There's a spring underneath this, a small spring. There's the spring, the cover, and we'll just merely pull out the diaphragm. And again, save that for the future on reassembly. Okay, now we're going to remove the 2 screws that hold the carburetor butterfly on again the left side carburetor, which is all I've been disassembling so far the parts off of. And these are extremely small screws, and these will not come with the kit or anything. You don't want to lose them. I'm sure you're not just going to go buy one of these screws. And again, under normal conditions, like I said earlier, you don't have to probably disassemble these carburetors as far as I'm doing, but if you run into a mess as good as this one, then you'll know how to also. Okay, a couple more turns on this one. These were pretty tight, but they did come. I had to really put a lot of pressure against the screwdriver to prevent from rounding the heads. Now just open the throttle, and hold the throttle open with your one hand, and then take and grab in with your thumb and index finger and wiggle and jiggle, and this butterfly will come out. It's again a machine fit, but there it is. And again, lay that to the side as usual for reassembly. Now we're going to just use the 10mm and remove the bolt that holds the nut that holds the linkage for the throttle cables on the carburetor. And after we turn this nut off, underneath of it is a lock washer. And then this just pulls off. Now underneath this is a spring, which I go through this on the reassembly video coming up. You'll have to start it on, and it like hooks the little tab here on it. I'm sort of just demonstrating where it does sit for future reference. And there is where the linkage slid on. And with that off, it is now time to work on separating the carburetors. And there's one screw here. We're going to grab here. It comes in from the right side carburetor. I wanted to say left. We've been working all along on the left, but which there is one in from that side. But first, we're just taking this one out. They're sort of hidden down in, but thanks to this video, you'll know where they're at. And I'm going to take after it's loosened. There it goes flying out with my needle nose pliers, and there's the one. Now, Here is the other one that goes in from the left side carburetor and threads into the right one. And up to this point, these screws are the only thing, and there's no choice that we have taken that is not, again, specific to the left carburetor parts. But this is the exception. But again, it's time to separate. And then once we're separated, how I'm going to do it, then we'll take and we'll disassemble the right carburetor. And the screw don't want to come out, but now it did. Okay, now with the other screw out, I'm going to just take and just gradually, real careful, because there's like a plastic vacuum tube that goes between the two carburetors. Don't want to break it. And just a gentle pull when they are pulling apart. And here, I'm just going to take and slide the rod for the linkage of the left carburetor out through. And there is the left carburetor separator from the right one. Now technically I did not do it. When you pulled them apart, that my index finger there for a second was on it. That screw for the carburetor synchronization you're supposed to take out. But on the other hand, it does slide right out from under it. Okay, now I'm going to take a Ziploc bag and mark left. And all the parts that we have taken from the left carburetor, I'm going to take and put in this Ziploc bag before they end up being put in parts cleaner and clean. And start with the main body of the carburetor, but of course, I'm just grabbing that chamber cover, a vacuum chamber cover, some miscellaneous hardware, and all our other screws and such. Again, make sure don't forget any of the little pieces. So again, have them on reassembly. What don't come in the kit. Again, there will be a video on reassembly. Some of this you will get new, and others, well, you're not going to get with the kit. You'll have to reuse. One good example, and I'm putting those in less since they're plastic, is the float itself, because that is fairly fragile being made of plastic. I'm going to put that on top of the PAL, along with that vacuum diaphragm. And here's still a couple more little pieces here we forgot, and of course big long spring. Now just sew it up, and nothing should get lost or mixed between the right and the left carburetors. Alrighty, there's the parts all bagged up. Put those out of the way. Now we're going to take and disassemble the right carburetor. And I'm going to start here by pulling this linkage out that goes between the two carburetors. And there's a few pieces here, a bushing and such. And taking, like I say, we'll start this, when we're done, we'll be again putting in a bag. And there's this vacuum tee. Lay that to the side. And now we're going to take and remove the float bowl cover. Furthermore, I'm just using the ratcheting wrench in the bit socket there. It has better torque than the screwdriver. These do seem extremely tight on this, so to hopefully prevent rounding them out. On this whole project of this bike on assembly, disassembly, removing the carburetors and rebuilding the carburetors, I only have one issue with the screw completely rounded out, and that was just the screw that holds the throttle cables on the reassembly of the bike, but that's not too big of a problem. Okay, now that they're loosened, I can just use the regular screwdriver, and then I'll finish turning the screws out with my fingers. Yeah, indeed, actually, tearing these carburetors apart, a lot, in my opinion, a lot simpler than getting them off the bike. Getting them off the bike is not any particularly fun matter. And here we have one more to take out, and then we'll see. I'm sure this is going to be equally as bad as the first one, and it's stuck on. That's, again, go figure. I know it's never been apart, and then again, sitting for 5 years with old gas didn't help either, and the bike's a 2003 model. Trying to get it without, there it is. It did finally pull off. And there you can see, that is actually dirtier than the first float bowl cover we had taken off. And you can see, rub my finger in there, there's a whole accumulation of rust particles. And now, this is just a rerun from the first carburetor. Slide the little pin that holds the float in place. And that's, like I say, there is the pin. Now we're going to take, now the floating needle should pull out, but as the first one, there's the float, but the needle appears like it's going to also be, incredibly stuck in place. Here comes the long needle nose pliers. I bought these a couple years ago to work on an injection pump on a diesel Volkswagen, to reach down in the injection pump, and I've used them a lot since. They're one of the handiest investments, Harbor Freight Special, I think I've ever bought. and there is the needle. And okay, now we can proceed. And this time around, it doesn't make any difference. I'm going to remove the main jet first instead of the slow jet. It doesn't really matter which order you remove them. It just seemed like it was right there and it wanted to come out first. It was the impatient one of the two of them. Now I will take and we'll remove the slow jet with the same screwdriver. Okay, and now as before, once we get the slow jet out, I'm going to take the 7mm socket and remove the main jet, the seat of it that it turns into. This time I'm going to use a little ratchet I have handy here, and there we go, that broke free. Nothing snapped off or anything. That just again would not be good. I've never had any such cars or motorcycles, any of these jets or anything snap off, but I'm sure it's happened to someone. And we're going to use the 10 and remove the needle seat out of the carburetor. And that was real tight, but again, no incidents. It did break free. And again, as before, once we get it broke free, we'll turn it out. It should here be underneath of it that filter and washer like the first one. And again, I'm certain, yep, there's the washer and the filter. And you can see actually rust specks on that. Now we're going to take and remove the chamber cover, the vacuum chamber cover. And as the first time, don't forget that once you get the screws out of them, to keep pressure on it because of that big long spring. It, like I say, could go flying across the room. Or in my case, I'm working outside, if you noticed, on the porch. It's a nice day. The lighting is good, so I took advantage of the situation and set a table up outdoors where I could see good all these fine pieces. When you're pushing 50 years old, the eyesight's not as good as what it once was. And especially all carburetors, especially motorcycle carburetors, the parts are minute, comparatively speaking. And if you notice the table I'm using, it's just like a card table, like 4x4 or 3x3. It's not large. It's all the larger you need on a carburetor to tear it apart. Okay, and there's the chamber cover off, and here comes the vacuum diaphragm sliding out. As before, set our parts here out of the way till we take and bag them up. Now we're going to remove the screws that hold the air cutoff valve on the carburetor. And again, remember, this is just a little spring, but remember there's also a spring under this once we get it out. And also pull out our vacuum hose connector. Okay, still have the one screw here to remove on this cover. And then we will be pretty much disassembled. And there's the diaphragm, the spring. Okay, now it's getting fairly tore down, about as far as we're going to be going here, except for we're going to remove this bolt and lock washer that holds the part of the throttle linkage on the carburetor. That came right loose with the 10mm socket. And as with the linkage on the other side, this spring, when you get it off, when it comes time to put it back on, you'll have to hook it, which there is a reassembly video coming up. You have to take and hook it and then like give it a turn with it hooked into place, because there's the end washer that's slotted to hold on the linkage, and there's again the washer, keep our pieces. Now we have to remove the butterfly, which as with carburetor 1, there's two very small screws, and on the other hand, these didn't seem so tight, at least one of them. Those first ones were again extremely tight. And honestly, I've said it earlier, perhaps you could pass on doing this. And actually, to finish getting it out, I didn't want to come. I had to use the needle nose pliers. Now we'll take and turn the other one out. And again, slowly. It almost puts you in mind, as snug as these are. They probably put like a Loctite or something on them. But who knows? But anyhow, it is out, the second one. And it'll be all nice and very disassembled to again wash it. And then with that out, we're going to take and open up our throttle to slide out the butterfly itself, as we did on the carburetor the left side. Now we're just again doing it on the right carburetor. And this butterfly is being a little more stubborn coming out, but I'm resisting the temptation because I know it wouldn't take much to bend it or grabbing the needle nose pliers. But anyhow, it came out just varnished. You can see that. And there's the rest of our linkage, and that should, again, just a little bit of carefully maneuvering it, wiggling it, and pulling, it should slide right out of there, and there it is. And that is one disassembled carburetor. As I mentioned before, you probably don't have to tear yours apart as far as this, but if you want to and such, there is all the steps given. And as the first time, we're going to take and put everything in a Ziploc bag. And again, be cautious of those little nylon washers where the carburetors sit together. Don't lose them. But then when it does come time to wash them in the parts cleaner, you don't want to soak them in the parts cleaner either, the plastic parts. And there I marked the sack right, just again not to mix the pieces up between the two of the carburetors. And again, deja vu, we're just going to take and put all the parts in the Ziploc bag for this carburetor. And it'll work out, nothing will be lost, hopefully. That's the objective on doing this. Lost parts are not good. But anyhow, I appreciate you for taking the time and viewing this. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can feel free to post them in the comments below. I don't check every day, but usually within a week, worst case scenario, I'll get back to you. And as always, in typical YouTube video, I appreciate any likes. If you like this, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, and even better yet, consider subscribing to the channel. I do a variety of videos, mostly carb repair, but here you see I do work on motorcycles and some product reviews, a little combination, but again, something for everyone. Hopefully they're all taste there, and of course, again, not everybody does like the same things, and there, voila, is all the parts bagged up. Okay, again, thank you for watching.